Welcome to something special. Welcome to TEDx. This TEDx event is part of a global conversation that takes place every day in every corner of the world. In schools, in theaters, in workplaces, even in prisons, people gather to hear the best ideas bubbling up in their communities. More than 3,000 TEDx events are held every year in 170 countries. It's a remarkable thing. TEDx events are self-organized under a license from TED, a non-profit organization devoted to discovering and sharing powerful ideas in the form of TED Talks. It's not TED itself, but your local TEDx team of volunteers that has done all the work to put on today's event, including booking all of the speakers. It's this team's ideas, dedication, and time that have made this possible. We really hope today's program sparks an exciting conversation. This is a day for curiosity and for skepticism, for inspiration and for action. The more you enter into it, the more you will take out. And now, on with the show.
Welcome to our virtual stage. Welcome to the intellectual revolution. It is great to finally be here, because trust me when I say that we have poured our tears, blood, and sweat into the making of this event. It was certainly a challenge to organize a TEDx event in a pandemic, but here we are. It is a great honor to represent the American University of Madaba through a TEDx event. It is the first of its kind for our university, and we hope the first of many. I have personally been an audience member of TED for years now. Watching TED Talks not only became an educational habit of mine, but a portal to meet tenacious and brilliant individuals. Individuals whose words educated and inspired me, and many others. Today, you will meet many individuals with incredible words and stories, and learn many new things. And we hope that through this event, you will start seeing the world a bit differently, as a puzzle, with each individual and their initiative as a puzzle piece in its composition. And our hope that once this event is over and you turn off the digital device from which you're watching, that you'll feel part of a bigger picture, a puzzle piece in this composition. For our world's history is full of ideas and thinkers, from our Arab Renaissance that has impacted our arts and philosophies and general curiosity of what surrounds us, to the Industrial Revolution that introduced our modern way of life that we still rely on. Now, it is time for a new era. It is time for an intellectual revolution. Now, let us welcome the knights of this revolution, our speakers, to the stage. Individuals with reliable experiences who are experts in their field and have created and made wonderful achievements, all essential to this new era. Ladies and gentlemen, let us march on.
Have you ever been through a mentally challenging time? A period in your life when you struggled with being happy or relaxed? Are you maybe going through this now? For me, anxiety was something I grew up with, and it was something that I always felt held me back from reaching my full potential. But in 2015, upon graduating high school, when I left Jordan to pursue my undergraduate degree in England, I was so eager to put all of that behind me. So I was away from family and most of my friends, but I was ready for a fresh start into adulthood. And for my 18-year-old brain, that, for some reason, meant lots of partying. And university made that really easy. As a welcoming to all new students and a chance for us to get to know one another, we kicked off the year with a week full of parties for all the freshmen. And on one of the nights, I caught what they call freshers' flu, which is basically an illness you're likely to catch in your first few weeks on campus, given the amount of socializing you're going to do. And that was back when getting crammed up with 100 other students from all over the world in one tiny enclosed dance floor wasn't something you'd think twice about. So it hit me quite hard. I had really high fever, bronchitis, a headache, and even completely lost my voice for 3 days. And that experience, away from my family, away from my comfort zone, was really different. It was the first time that I felt really homesick. And it was the first experience of many I had away from home that aggravated my anxiety. At the time, I was living on campus in a 2-story house with 7 other girls. I became good friends with some of them. And near the end of the 2nd semester of that year, my friend, a young student herself, who was living in the room right next to mine, suddenly passed away. And needless to say, that shook the entire student community. I couldn't bear the thought of staying in that house and immediately moved out. Soon after, my health started to get worse. Out of the blue, I developed food allergies, hormonal imbalances, gut problems, skin inflammation, and I was diagnosed with depression. One of the visible symptoms I had was cystic acne, which stayed with me for 3 years. And for 3 years, I was too insecure to show my face in public. No amount of makeup could cover it up, and my performance at university started to deteriorate. I skipped classes, deadlines, stopped socializing, and my world got really dark. I saw doctor after doctor to help me with my symptoms and tried medicine after medicine, but nothing worked. My symptoms only got worse. Eventually, my doctors concluded that the cause behind my mysterious illnesses was psychosomatic, meaning that my mental health was affecting my physical health, and my worsened physical health was affecting my mental health, and so on. It was a vicious cycle, really. One that I had to break. And that was the start of a journey that completely changed my life for the better. I started doing lots of research, day after day, month after month, and then one thing became very clear to me. I could no longer look at my health from a one-dimensional point of view. I learned about the importance of holistic health, which encompasses the physical, mental, social, environmental health, all of which are interconnected. And with this newly found knowledge, I underwent a 180-degree transformation, from my eating habits to what I fill my time with, even to what I use to brush my teeth with. And the one thing that all of these changes had in common is that they were all attempts that I took to shift to a more natural way of living. And for the first time, in 3 years, my health started to improve. My symptoms began fading away, and I started feeling happy again. And this is what I want to share with you today. How I started living more naturally, and how I became happier and healthier doing so. If I could summarize my entire transformation in one phrase, it would be this: transforming my then mindless behavior into conscious decisions. Consciousness is generally defined, in simple terms, as being aware of something. Yourself, your thoughts, your surroundings. For me, it also meant being aware of how my decisions, actions, and surroundings are impacting my health. How many of you, before you have a meal, ask yourselves, where did this burger come from? What does the entire process prior to it sitting so nicely on my plate look like? And what is it doing to my body, besides exciting my taste buds and filling me up when I eat it? How many of you ask yourselves, before you brush your teeth in the morning, how was this plastic toothbrush produced? How is it affecting my health when I use it? And what will happen to it after I throw it away? In today's world of convenience, things are designed in a way that eliminates consciousness. We eat fast food because it's convenient. We use plastic toothbrushes because they're convenient. But little do we know and are conscious about the fact that the meat in our burger comes from an industry that is linked to a higher spread of viruses, like the coronavirus, because animal agriculture is taking up the space of forests, and thus is eliminating the natural barrier, preventing diseases circulating amongst wildlife from reaching us. It doesn't occur to us to think, every time we use our toothbrush, that tiny microscopic particles of the plastic enter our bodies and disrupt our endocrine systems and hormonal balance. Or that when we throw our toothbrushes away, they release toxic chemicals into the soil and water that actually enter our food chain. Just picture the idea that we are unintentionally eating fragments of our own toothbrush. Or even worse, someone else's toothbrush. And after becoming aware of this clear connection between the health of the planet and our health as human beings, I knew I had to change the way I lived. But when we're living so conveniently, changing our lifestyle can be challenging. So what helps transform the sense of consciousness into actions? After asking a group of 50 people who adopted and committed to more environmentally and health-conscious ways of living, what were the factors that enabled them to make the shift? They all had one thing in common. They all believed in their personal influence. One of the most common beliefs that successful leaders have is the belief that they can make a difference. By that sense, believing in your personal influence is a prerequisite and can be a strong motivator to taking action. So, stemming from my acknowledgement of my personal influence, I gradually started going green in an attempt to also become healthier. I knew that by ditching the fast food burger and instead having wholesome, locally sourced food, and switching to a bamboo toothbrush and using natural homemade toothpaste, that by doing so, I was doing good for the earth and good to my body. But what I didn't know at the time is that I was also doing good to my mental health. Kelly McGonigal, who is a psychologist and lecturer at Stanford University, talks about how doing acts of service can be a strong and very powerful tool to overcome depression and manage stress. In other words, practicing healthier habits for the planet as an act of service releases serotonin, a hormone that is associated with a greater sense of personal influence and self-worth and appreciation, which are very important ingredients for better mental health. This process also releases dopamine, a hormone that elevates our sense of motivation and encourages us to keep taking action in that direction. And more action means more dopamine and more encouragement to keep taking that action. After asking the same 50 people what mental health challenges, if any, they experienced after going green, 94% of them said that they have experienced more overall happiness. And 70% reported reduced stress. This essentially means that by going green, we're not only helping our future selves and our children live in a more environmentally sustainable way, it literally means that we are also helping ourselves in that exact moment. We are experiencing biological shifts in our favor in that very moment. But it doesn't end here. 80% of that same group of people said that they've experienced a stronger connection to nature after going green, and hence have started spending more time outdoors, going on hikes, and so on. And this is important because research published by Harvard Medical School talks about ecotherapy, which is a growing scientific field that offers a connection between spending time in nature and experiencing a reduction in stress, anxiety, and depression. Studies show that when taking a walk in nature versus taking a walk in an urban setting, we experience lower activity in our brain's prefrontal cortex, the region that is responsible or that is active during repetitive negative thoughts. More and more research is indicating to the symbiotic relationship between nature and human happiness. I started this journey because I was stuck. I was stuck in a loophole of bad physical health caused by my bad mental health, and I desperately wanted a way out. 3 years later, I'm still working on becoming more aligned with nature every day, and I run a startup working in the environmental scene to tackle food waste, and a social enterprise that supports other green startups working towards environmental sustainability. And I have never felt happier and healthier. There are 4 steps that helped me on my transformational journey. 4 steps that you can take as well. Number 1, build your knowledge. Number 2, practice consciousness. Number 3, acknowledge your personal influence. And number 4, enjoy the feel-good experience of taking action. I'm only one of many people who have felt happier since going green. And we're living in particularly challenging times today, in which depression and anxiety are quite prevalent. But despite external factors that are affecting our mental health, we can create our own happiness. After learning how the mind and body work and finding one more way we can influence them. So, if you are someone who's looking to find a way to feel less blue, try going green. Thank you.
Hello, My name is Rami Al-Karmi, and I'm a proud 666 birth-dated Gemini. I've tried a lifetime to suppress my evil Gemini twin. My other Gemini twin is a Master Jedi, fanatic fan of Star Wars. I try to be my best, and be a loving family member to my wife, 2 loving kids, Masa and Kareem. Kareem, by the way, is also a Gemini. Geminis are playful, intellectually curious, constantly juggling variety of passions, hobbies, and even the friends and groups of friends. I remember my mom always asking, when will he get a normal life? When will he get a normal job? When will he lead a normal life? I grew to some extent with this motto just because it worked in the past. A prophecy, if you may, or a mission to help people, organizations, and even nations to self-disrupt before it's too late. But I always used to get this question, isn't disrupting yourself crazy? And I used to have many techniques to tackle this until I watched the movie, The Joker, last year with this amazing quote, is it just me or is it getting crazier out there? So I kind of adopted this mantra and created another Gemini twin, the Joker Gemini twin. Of course, I've never wore makeup. This is an effect within artificial intelligence called neural style transfer. Everything I do in terms of innovation looks into a similar model of mimicking 2 separate images and morphing them together, just like the neural style transfer. One clearly enemy of change and disruption is fear. And there's a small part in our brains called the amygdala, which is focused on the prime function of tackling fear. That's why all news agencies focus on headlines that create fear, because then our amygdala kicks in and takes over, so they grab our attention. They grab our attention. So again, the minute you step into an organization and you start disrupting, who is really asking this question? Isn't disrupting ourselves crazy? It's the immunity system, the amygdala, the fear. They step in and try to protect mother core ship. How can we maintain status quo is what they have in mind. So again, just because it worked in the past. If I challenge you to answer and name an industry that has disruption immunity, I would easily bet you that no industry has disruption immunity. We've seen the Nokias, we've seen Kodak, we've also seen Blockbuster. Blockbuster, by the way, during 2008, recorded a peak revenue of $4 billion, which made their CEO on that year say that neither Redbox nor Netflix are even on their radar screen in terms of competition. Yet, next year, right after the $4 billion in revenue, they closed down. Everything should go. And we've all seen the story of how Netflix skyrocketed versus Blockbuster going bankrupt. Also, let's look at banks and their business models. And I would like to borrow the model, the business model canvas model by my dear friend Alex Osterwalder to describe business models of banks. So if we look at the value propositions of banks, we have 2 clear value propositions. Deposit solutions at lower interest, credit solutions at higher interest. Our customer segments are super simple. Depositors and borrowers. They can be companies or personal. Our revenue streams are simply interest income, fee income, and investment returns. What do you see wrong in this picture? This has been the same business model for banks since the year 1472. This is a screaming alert, red alert, of a blockbuster rerun. Banks initially decided to kick off their amygdala, their fear, their immunity system, against fintechs. And they said fintechs are only chomping around the fringes. But today, there's a larger threat attacking banks and the financial sector, with all the tech fins, Googles, the Apples, and Facebooks, even Amazon, stepping into this space. We've seen the Apple Card, we've seen the Google Cash account, and many, many more ideas that are stepping into this space. So again, I've seen blockbuster reruns across many, many sectors just during my current lifetime. And this has been going on for ages. So we've seen this across telecom, where Skype and voice over IP providers killed long-distance calls and roaming. WhatsApp killed the revenue coming from SMS messages. Even mobility and travel was disrupted by the Ubers and Airbnb. And under the retail, we've seen how Amazon and Uber Eats and the likes disrupted this space by far. We've all seen the disruptors, be it the Amazons and the Ubers and what have you. But what really is common between the 6 companies that are famous for that is that none of them existed 20 years ago. None of them. So they were all born during downtimes, which is very interesting. 4 years ago, I was selected to join a small, unique, hand-picked group at NASA called the NASA Cross-Industry Innovation Group. And during those 4 years, annually, we connect around 50 top executives in innovation from the Googles, the Teslas, and what have you, connect within the NASA headquarters and deliver what we call Innovation X Talks, mini TED Talks, if you may. The whole concept is, how would you bring the top innovation brains into a room and make sure you connect them, allow them to design cross-industry innovation and borrow innovations from different industries. This group connected during the pandemic, and we designed under a digital remote format a working model that allowed us to create a report that would help us tackle what COVID-19 has done. And what would we do? How can we address the realities posed by COVID-19? The report was called Never Normal. And the COVID definitely was put a main question mark around what is normal. So we've seen the FDA, for example, grant approvals in less than 24 hours. We've seen Wuhan build a 1,000-bed hospital in 8 days. We've seen Twitter. We've seen many of the Silicon Valley companies tell their employees to work from home indefinitely. We've seen Zara, we've seen Microsoft, and most of the retail shops shut down and decide to permanently shut down right after the pandemic. But really, we've also seen a record in the wealth transfer. So it's not all downtime. We've seen the top wealthy billionaires accumulatively increase their net worth with 931 billion. We've also seen small businesses lose more than 200 billion collectively. So do we sit down and play the Hunger Games, or do we really screw business as usual? And because the new normal is abnormal, I coined a term called abnormal that dictates a necessity of disruption, dictates a necessity to evolve our mindset and our business to be able to address the Hunger Game, the mass disruptions taking place across most of the industries. And I put this into a book, which I'm hoping to be launched soon, released soon. And under this book, I mention a number of secrets that would allow you to survive what goes on during the abnormal. I'll be mentioning, for time's sake, I'll be mentioning only 6 of the top secrets presented in the book. And I start with helping you evolve your mindset, secret number 1. Evolving your mindset to address what's the difference between the exponential and linear growth. And what does that mean? So taking it simply to the basics, the main difference between 30 steps that are linear versus 30 steps that are exponential. With the 30 linear steps, I simply end up 30 meters away from where I started. While under exponential steps, so if I start with 1 step, 2 steps, 4 steps, 8 steps, and what have you, upon my 30th step, my 30th exponential step, I would turn 26 times around planet Earth. More than 1 million kilometers. So imagine the difference between 30 steps and 30 exponential steps. Mind-blowing, huh? So what do I do with that? One thing I really learned working with the NASA group is adopting a 10x mindset, the exponential mindset, versus a 10% mindset. And with the 10% mindset, you are likely to lose because you're basically putting yourself in direct competition with everyone else in your industry. While with the 10x mindset, you completely are trying to solve a radically hard problem. And you basically approach the problem with a completely different mindset and a completely different way. The exponential growth has been fueled by Moore's law, which also exponentially grew if you look at calculating $1,000 worth of computing power, so your iPhone, for example. And we've seen how this has grown exponentially across years. This has really fueled all the technologies we've heard on the fourth industrial revolution, be it the cloud computing, nano material, artificial intelligence, blockchain, robotics, 3D printing, and what have you. So if we go back 35 years ago, if I needed to have a TV, a radio, a calculator, and many of the tools that I have today in my phone, it would actually cost me $32 million. While today, this is simply less than $900 in my pocket. And I don't need to carry all that around. This is the power of exponential technologies. Human adaptability grows linearly, while technology grows exponentially. And the only way to be able to adapt is to clearly shift the curve of human adaptability by learning and unlearning faster. So how do we do that? Trick number 2, secret number 2, your North Star. You define a meaningful progress. Some people call this their North Star, others call it their massive transformational purpose. Pick your meaningful progress and make sure it carries the mindset of abundance. So no longer focus on scarcity and what do you control in terms of assets. Number 3, evolve your team. Build a black ops team. Make sure they have autonomy. They don't operate in hierarchy. Make sure you see shippable products, shippable results within less than a week. Have a crazy team on board. Most of my team are Geminis, by the way. Allow them with autonomy to question everything and anything, and give them full autonomy to operate based on that. Make sure you don't hire based on experience. Hire based on the skill of learning, ability to learn, unlearn, and relearn. Build a culture that looks like a swarm. No one is CEO of swarm. No one tells the swarm, go right, go left. They all operate without thinking. And this has been built into the bees when they actually call it the swarm intelligence, and use that to design artificial swarm intelligence when they designed the drones. So we put this into a process that allows, if you may, creating a super brain of brains. And we called it the think swarming model, to allow the group to operate together in much faster approaches. Evolve your business model through business model innovation. And with that, historically, if we look at transactional business models, historically, all municipalities basically built infrastructure. And they tried to monetize that through transactions. So they designed tolls, toll booths. You would arrive into the toll booth, you would pay cash. This moved gradually into contactless and cashless, like the RFID sticker that is in Dubai. That never changed the business model. That's the same business model, yet digitized. So what we really need is a shift, a business model innovation, rethink of how you approach things. And just to build on the same analogy, you keep the same road, but you no longer focus on the transaction. You create a full, vibrant ecosystem around this road, and you basically flourish based on you and them successfully growing your businesses, i.e. introducing platforms and ecosystems. Fifth secret is evolving your approach. When I delivered my talk at NASA, my Gemini son, who is fascinated with being an astronaut and was crazy about his father being there at NASA and speaking to the NASA audience, asked me to question the audience. How did Matt Damon, during the movie, The Martian, how did he basically, because he spent most of the movie wandering around Mars, how was he able, what was the technology that went into his suit that allowed him to sit comfortably on a minus 80 degrees Fahrenheit rock? And the answer I got from the group was, that's only a movie. And when I asked him that, he said, I know that that's only a movie, but I really wanted to see if they had an idea of how to do it, because I know by the time we reach Mars, there will be a solution. And that brings me to the second point, my fifth secret. And of course, the movie was shot in the marvelous Wadi Rum here in Jordan. You really need to adopt an approach that all solutions are already solvable, even if you still don't know how to solve them. And that really makes a difference. My sixth and final secret for today is execute at speed. Execution at speed is driven by you making sure that you don't hesitate. So do or do not, there is no try, as Master Yoda always says. Attack and make sure you're onto stuff. So the next time someone questions your ability to disrupt, describes you with crazy, or kicks in their amygdala, simply remember the Joker going down the New York famous stairs and asking, is it just me, or is it getting crazier out there? This is the abnormal age, and I ask you all to adopt this mindset and make sure you clearly understand how mass disruptions is inevitable. Your only way to survive is to evolve beyond the master games. Thank you.
I will start my talk with taking you to Canada, where I started my master's degrees back in 2008. I was sitting in a classroom. It was the first lecture in my master's degree, and it was about business administration. The professor asked a question, or he asked us to raise our hand if we will start our new business. At that time, I was a little bit anxious about making a new business, especially that I came from a culture and family who found security in employment. So I kept my hand down, but 70% of the students in that classroom raised their hand up, saying that they want to start their own business after doing their master's degree. In Canada, where I lived for 3 years, my mind started to change because their point of view to life, their way of thinking, their way of living was a little bit different than our culture and our tradition. I remember there was a trendy sentence at that time. It was think outside the box. It was written on office accessories, pillows, chairs, etc. After a while, I started to understand what does that mean, think outside the box. There was also a trend in businesses at that time where the businesses that introduced a new idea captured everybody's attention. While when I started thinking about a new idea, my family, my culture, the surrounding started to say, no, it will not succeed. This is what we are used to. Anything new, everyone will tell you it will not succeed. Just don't bother. During that time, where I was living in Canada for a couple of years, I got pregnant and I started to do my checkups in the hospital where I will be delivering there. The doctor asked us to go to a series of classes. Those classes will help us get ready for delivery and what comes after, from raising the baby and everything related to parenting. Because the doctor asked us to do so, we thought that this is a mandatory thing and we should go and do those classes. So we enrolled ourselves, me and my partner, which is my husband, in those classes. Those classes took us from when to go to the hospital, how the contractions will feel, what to expect in the hospital room, how to understand the medical vocab that we will be hearing at that day. Also, what are the medications that usually help in the labor process, and breastfeeding and baby care, everything related to life after having a baby. Those classes amazed us. Every week we took a class. I was like amazed, but at the same time relaxed, because the idea of those classes were to prepare us for what's going to happen after having a baby. And the key is knowledge, because whenever you want to go to a new experience, let's say travel somewhere you don't know, you need to prepare, right? So if anyone tells you you're going to Australia tomorrow without telling you anything, you will go unprepared and it will be a bad experience. Whether if they come to tell you you're going to Australia, there is beaches, you have to pack for that and to get ready for what's going to happen there and what you will see there, then you will be prepared and you will have a nice experience. The idea of those classes prepared us for a very good experience of birth and delivery in Canada, and that was back in 2008. After that, there was like a medical staff who used to visit us in the house in order to check if I'm raising the baby in a good way, if I need help, they answer the question. They even have a hotline, they used to call it baby hotline, where I can call them any time during the night, during the day, to answer any question that I have with the baby. They also gave us extra sessions, including first aid and CPR, if the baby choked while I start to put the solid food in the baby mouth, what should I do, and everything related to the baby during the first years. This kind of experience showed me that if someone with this background, the medical background or the parenting background, comes and shared this knowledge with me, I would feel I'm the master mom. I know everything about babies and I can raise this new baby, which is a new experience, in a very good way. Back at that time, my friends who delivered in Jordan used to call me to Canada to ask, what should I do when the baby does this? What did the nurse in Canada told you? If the baby does this, how should we react? So I thought, this is a need. All new moms want somebody trained to come and train them in order to have a good experience with a baby. And from that time, I started to think, how should I bring this service back to Jordan? How should I train myself in order to start a business and share this knowledge with my Jordanian, let's say, new moms? I took a course. It was a 1-year course where I was educated on how to give classes, how to guide a woman into labor and birth, how to guide new parents into raising the new baby. This course, which is 1 year, had a lot of birth experiences. So I was going to the hospital to attend birth, write a report, send the report to a special institute in order to get my certificate. During that year, all what I was thinking about is how should I go to Jordan, bringing this knowledge and to start sharing the service or to start a business there. We came back to Jordan in 2010, and I was excited to share all this knowledge with gynecologist doctors, pediatricians, and the community in Jordan. But every reaction I had was like, don't bother, don't start this. Even my family, my dad was, you studied pharmacy. Why should you move to a specialty that no one knows about? This will be so hectic for you to start. Just forget it. Open a pharmacy and sit there. The doctors who I used to visit in order to tell them this service will help your patients. She will be more knowledgeable. She will be ready for birth. She will not ask you all the silly questions. You should encourage your patient to come and take the classes with me. He was, no, she will understand that and she will get it from her mom, from her sisters, from the cousins. Why would you bother and share this experience? I was resisting this kind of energy that I faced in Jordan for about a couple of months. And in those months, I was trying to start those classes, start a series of classes for couples who want those classes. And I started as a voluntary work. So I was like offering the classes for free. I know this couple, they were expecting, I was like inviting them, I would give you the classes in my house, no charge, because I want to spread this service. And at that time, Ru'ya TV started in Jordan, and I contacted them saying that I want to share this knowledge on TV in order to raise awareness. And I started doing weekly segments, free of charge, in order to raise awareness about maternity, health, parenting, and everything related to raising a new baby. This drew the attention of the Jordanian community into this kind of service or this kind of field. And they started to look at those information that they take from the TV as a need. They were like, yes, we had those questions. My doctor did not answer those questions. And they started to ask me the questions that they want. Here, my credibility started to grow in Jordan. And when I started to offer my classes, sometimes in gyms, sometimes in preschool, sometimes in children educational centers, here I started to see that there is need in those classes. But the community who started to take the classes are the expats community in Jordan, because they know from their countries that this is a mandatory service for any woman going into labor. From that, I took the service that I was giving the new parents into growing this service into a business, because I thought that it's really hectic for me to keep taking myself here and there, carrying my teaching aids everywhere. So I started to think I should start a business offering those classes and offering other needs or services that I started to see that the community in Jordan needs, such as first aid classes, sleep training, how to raise a difficult children, and other consultations. I started a business called Birth and Beyond that was 6 years ago. In this business, we offer those services, But when I started this business, I started with a very small area because at that time, I'm not sure of the Jordanian community if they will accept this kind of service. And then I started to expand. So I took it baby steps. But I faced a lot of challenges. First, the moms used to say, maybe your certification is not qualified. I'm not sure that I will take the classes with you. I prefer not to take it. Others were saying, I prefer to be surprised. Why should I be prepared for labor and birth? I prefer to be surprised, and whatever happens, happens. And also, some of the doctors refused to send their patients to take the classes because they were like, what will I get? Usually doctors are used to pharmaceutical companies. They give them certain percent, certain credit in order to support their business. But I was not offering that for doctors, so they were not supporting the business. Those are some of the challenges. Other challenges were like the community was not accepting the idea. They were like always asking me, do you have people coming to the classes? Is that a good business? I think you're wasting your time. So I started to think of doing a big conference for the medical staff and the medical community in Jordan in order to raise awareness about this idea in their fields, like in their clinics, in the hospitals, and in all the medical fields in Jordan. So I did a conference. It was the first maternal and child health conference in Jordan. This conference gathered a lot of the medical staff in Jordan, from gynecologists to pediatricians to doctors in the military hospitals, private hospitals, public hospitals, and all that. In order to do this conference, we used to get like patronage from a princess or patronage from anyone who's related to this field. So when the organizers of this conference asked me who I want as a patronage, I was like, let's get the Queen Rania. And they were like, no, Queen Rania doesn't get that patronage for any conference in Jordan. She's not like used to giving that patronage. And I was insisting, if I want to do something, I need it to be big. And I wrote a letter to Her Majesty asking for her patronage, and she gave us the patronage to that conference, and it was a hit conference in Jordan. The medical staff, the doctors, all the people who were invited to this conference were giving us credit for such a conference. And we did also a one-day conference for moms, which was a once in a lifetime in Jordan and also in the region. Usually the conferences are used to be given to doctors, but the moms used to be like, I will take the information from my doctor who went to that conference. So I flipped the idea. I was like, Mom, you're invited to a conference. You will take the information that you need from that conference. And we invited the best speakers in Jordan to give the moms the information that they need for maternity, parenting, and how to raise up their children, including their maternal health as moms as well. During my career, I found out that leadership is important in any business, especially for women who are starting a new business. And from my experience with Vital Voices, it's an organization who targets women in business. This organization trains women in order to have a good leadership skill, in order to grow their businesses and to share knowledge all over. I found out that 5 pillars defined a good leader, especially for women. A woman should have a driving force. So always ask yourself, what is my driving force? Also, a woman should share her knowledge in order to grow the community. Connect between the lines. For example, if you think that collaboration with someone who you think is not interested in your field or in your idea, I think you should try. And this is what connects between the lines means. Also, you should always have bold ideas, which is like the conference that I did. This will draw attention to your business, will grow the business, and all that. So this leadership model defines a good business. And I was lucky to be chosen as one of 40 women last year with Vital Voices in order to grow my leadership skills with them. To end up my talk, next time anyone asks you to raise your hand if you want to take your idea against the tradition, or if you want to start a new business where your thought was telling you no, I think you should think outside the box. Thank you.
My story might be your story. I am a musician. How proud I am to finally be able to say that I am a musician. Since I am in a TED Talk, I can brag a bit about myself, and I'm going to tell you a secret. I'm not any musician, I'm a different one. To be more precise, my journey is different. Why is that? Could it be because I composed 3 instrumental albums under the genre of Eastern-Western fusion, distributed by mega stores physically and online by more than 20 distributors? Could it be because I performed with big names such as Andrea Bocelli and Moeen from Persia? Could it be because I'm writing a music book featuring the Middle Eastern instrument the oud, accompanied with other Western instruments that can be played by musicians all around the world? Or because even I traveled the world as a performer, composer, and lecturer? Well, the answer is none of the above. I was just 14, a middle child from a family of 7 children. Yet I was my parents' favorite child, or this is how I prefer to think about it. My father passed away when I was 16. My mom did everything she could to cover his place. My older brothers were busy studying, typically engineering or medicine, pursuing good income and good life. When it was my turn to go to college, I wanted to study music. Oh God, you want to see my mom's reaction when I told her I want to study music. You need to see her face expressions. And this is what she said: music! How can music be a career? Will it help you making a living? By the way, that was not during the 19th century. It was just in 1995. I was just 18. So I thought to myself, why do I always have to take a different path? When all my brothers and friends were playing football, I played squash, yet became a champion and a national player. When they all listened to pop music, I was listening to Pink Floyd. And many, many other things I chose differently. I thought to myself, now it's the future. I need to be wise and follow the normal path and do something safe, play it safe this time. Maybe I'm gonna study business. So I get a big certificate that will open the gates of companies and banks for me, and will have a secure income, go up the ladder, and maybe one day be successful and rich. But to tell you the truth, every single class during the business school was torture. The watch simply did not move, it freezed. I'm not a business school material, I just can't process numbers. Years later, when I started reading about how the brain functions and the 2 halves of the brain, how they function, I realized that one of them does not function. So I realized that the right hemisphere, which is in charge of creativity and imagination, was working well. Simply, I'm designed to be a musician, an artist, artista, ein Künstler, Fannan. It took me 2.5 years of pain and failing some subjects and missing some classes while I was doing the business study. I decided to take ownership of my life and daring to be the first one of my family, immediate, even extended community, to break the norms and the preconceptions. I went to the registrar, I filled the papers, and I passed the practical exam, and the next day I was a music and arts student, throwing 2.5 years of my life studying business, and started all over again. For 3 years, while I was at the music school, my name was on a fancy board at the entrance of the faculty as part of the honorable students. If you're thinking about my family, they knew that I changed my major a year later. And to be honest, I still don't know who told them. They have their own sources. Naturally, as any family, it took us a couple of arguments, a couple of dramas, but eventually they approved it. You know what? My mom was right. Music is not a career. It is a passion. It's a gift. It did not make me rich in money, but I feel very rich spiritually. Every morning, I wake up full of energy. I jump out of my bed. I want to convert my ideas and imagination into compositions. I never dreamt of being rich or having a big office. I tried some jobs and offices, and trust me, 9 to 5 working routine is a systematic, structured brain damage process for artists. It's not a cliche, I promise. When I held the guitar for the first time, I felt complete. Cello is my soulmate. I used to lock myself in my room for hours practicing, daring to change a phrase or bowing or an expression by one of the great Western classical composers. The oud is my companion. I take it wherever I travel. It is this Arabic instrument that echoes the sound of nostalgia to my country of origin. It doesn't matter where you are. The strings will lift you to an ethereal journey, then gradually lands you gently back in peace. That was my dream. And today, I am a musician. I made an effort not to succumb to social settings pressure and compliance, and did not accept to be part of the statistics stating that 85 to 90% of people around the world do not like their jobs. I just did not accept to be part of that. I just followed my inner voice. And that reminds me of an interview that I once saw by Bruce Lipton, where he talked about your inner subconscious program. And he said, if you are struggling to do something repeatedly and it's not working, it means it's not part of your program, because every one of us has his program. So, and this subconscious or inner program usually is formed by the age of 7. When you think a lot about if you're happy or not, like my situation when I was doing the business degree, it means you need to pause, reflect, and maybe change something. Bernard Shaw articulates this with simple, however, beautiful words. The way to have a happy life is to be too busy, doing what you like all the time, having no time left to you to consider that you are happy or not. Think about this for a moment. Does that apply on you? As I'm trying to convey the theme of intellectual revolution from an artistic perspective, I believe that intellectual revolution is here to serve and save us from not blindly following the norms or focusing fundamentally on sharing generic perceptions to create a sense of social belonging to a certain tradition or cult. By totally or partially ignoring the creativity of the individual. Because I support this by saying most ideas, they come from an individual, such as compositions, scientific innovation, then they will be executed by collaborative work or by a group, including other individuals. Adding to that, we intend to think that some people do not appreciate the arts, or they like to perceive artists as entertainers, only as entertainers, not as thinkers or rebels or influencers that they can influence societies, they can create change. It might be due to the educational system that focuses on traditional career-oriented studies and not offering adequate self-development and artistic opportunities. I see music as a vehicle to address many aspects of one's inner emotional world. And the more I get involved in music, I have come to realize that in our highly stressful societies and in our highly stressful lifestyles with a multitude of mental and psychological issues, music is such a powerful therapeutic tool. Our society accepts this as a truth. However, paradoxically, many traditional conservative societies have failed to recognize this very important role that music can play. Remember that changing your mind after realizing something isn't right for you can sometimes feel like the end of the world. But really, it isn't a bad thing. Most likely it will help you out in the long run. The way I personally dealt with the opposition by pursuing an unconventional career as a fuel to feed my ambition to work harder and smarter with no limitations. Try to put your fingertip and contribute to this intellectual revolution through your own passion.
Thank you for the attention and time you have dedicated to us. We hope that through today's event, we've been able to distract you from the current turmoil of uncertainty, but in a fruitful and productive way. For when most divided, we came united. A special thank you goes to the essence of this event, our speakers, who have turned the stage into a microcosm of knowledge. Thank you for the determination and resilience that you have demonstrated in the face of this year's obstacles. Thank you for reinforcing the fact that we can adapt and evolve. Because if anything this year has taught us, or well, this pandemic, is that there are many ways to do something rather than how we're accustomed to. It has revolutionized our way of thinking, acting, and operating. The greatest thank you goes to everyone who has directly contributed into the making of this event possible, from our student team to supervising professors and to our sponsors. we are aware of the obstacles that everyone is facing at the moment. And that is why we wish to encourage mutual support by supporting local enterprises and initiatives. Especially with the holiday season just behind the corner, it is the perfect opportunity to receive and give back. And with this, I bid you farewell. And remember, the revolution continues with you.